Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the North Carolina Bar Association's recorded panel, The Ins and Outs of the North Carolina Department of Justice's Health and Human Services Division. Thank you, panelists, for being here with us today. My name is Kayla Britz. I am an Assistant Attorney General at the North Carolina Department of Justice in the Condemnation Section. Derek, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Derek Hunter. I am a Special Deputy Attorney General with the North Carolina Department of Justice and the section head for the Health Service Section. We represent the Division of Health Service Regulation within the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Eric Hunt. I'm the Special Deputy Attorney General, the senior most of the licensure attorneys here. And just a little bit, I did attend Duke Law School, and I've been practicing for about 10 years, of which about 4 was in private practice, and the remainder has been here.
Hi, all. My name is Cannon Lane. I'm an Assistant Attorney General in the section, and I have been with DOJ for almost 2 years now.
Well, thank you all for being here and giving us some of your time. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions. Feel free to answer if you have something to say. So please identify and distinguish the various practice areas that are covered within your division.
I guess I'll jump in on that. So as I mentioned earlier, we represent the Division of Health Service Regulation, which is a division within the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. And that division consists of 12 sections. A few of them are the acute and home care licensure and certification section, which represents and which regulates hospitals and home care agencies. We have the adult care section, which regulates the adult care facilities, assisted living facilities, so on and so forth. There is the healthcare planning and certificate of need section, which issues certificates of need for new institutional health services in North Carolina. There is the mental health licensure and certification section, which regulates the mental health residential facilities and group homes. And we also have the construction section, healthcare personnel education and credentialing, which primarily regulates unlicensed healthcare personnel who work in healthcare facilities that have been, if they have accusations of abuse, neglect, or fraud. For example, the healthcare personnel registry substantiates or investigates and either substantiates or unsubstantiates those findings, and those individuals may be listed on the healthcare personnel registry. We also represent nursing home, the Office of Emergency Medical Services, radiation protection, and the North Carolina Radon program. So the Division of Health Service Regulation is very broad, consists of numerous sections that cover a broad range of healthcare services in North Carolina. We are in charge of the litigation for all of those sections, and it's a very rewarding job. So that's pretty much the Division of Health Service Regulation in a nutshell.
Okay. Cannon, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your specific section and what you do?
Yeah, so I am under Derek's umbrella, but personally I work on licensure cases. And so that's the adult care licensure and mental health licensure. But I also, my position is split kind of between that and then the healthcare personnel registry. And so I do a little bit of both.
All right, well, we'll ease into the second question here. Tell us about a day in a life in your position.
So a day in the life in the position, it's pretty varied. We are litigation focused in all of the different sections. But what that looks like is we handle, filing motions, we prepare for hearings, we prepare witnesses. The policy of the state is settlement in certain cases. And so for licensure, we are often engaged in those discussions with opposing counsel or pro se individuals. The other part of our role is we are advisory. And so we provide a lot of, advice to DHHS as they navigate these programs. And I know that that umbrella is very wide. So Eric, Derek, if y'all want to jump in on that area, I know you all are more involved on that front.
Go ahead, Eric.
Sure. So in my role, I've been here a little bit longer and do have a more senior role. So most of what I do on a day-to-day basis, I do have a caseload. My caseload tends to skew a little more to the complex matters. There are some more complex matters we get in licensure, and not currently, but will also be called upon occasionally to handle matters outside of the Office of Administrative Hearings. So most of our litigation is filed in the Office of Administrative Hearings because these are procedural rights that are granted relating to licenses, certificates of need, etc., before various state agencies. We do also occasionally handle civil litigation in various jurisdictions throughout the state when DHSR, the division, is sued. Similarly, federal litigation potentially when they are sued in federal court. So day to day, I also handle settlement negotiations, communication with opposing counsel, but I probably spend more time working with some of our other more senior attorneys, advising our client, as well as conducting more comprehensive discovery, preparing for and taking depositions and those type of things, and involving some of the more junior attorneys in those matters, kind of as needed to get further experience. So that's a little bit of a different, but overall very similar.
All right, Derek, I know your days probably look very different, but feel free to share anything you would like to share about anybody's days within the division.
Sure. Yeah, my days probably look a little different than Eric's and Cannon's, because as a section head, I'm in charge of managing the litigation of the entire division. So licensure cases that Eric may be handling, or Cannon may be handling, healthcare personnel registry cases, certificate of need cases. My personal caseload is typically just certificate of need, but sometimes there are other kind of tangential cases that might come through, for example, constitutional challenges and things of that nature. Typically, the section head or the more senior attorneys would handle those types of cases. So sometimes I do get involved in that type of litigation. But otherwise, my day consists mainly of advising any of the clients from any of the 12 sections across DHSR, on various legal issues that may come up, consulting with other practitioners, particularly in the certificate of need area, answering questions regarding legislative issues and getting new legislation passed, rule changes, statutory interpretation, things of that nature outside of my own caseload, which typically consists, as I said, of certificate of need cases that I handle on my own. And just as Eric said, that's depositions and trials, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court, as far as those cases may go.
Okay, and we keep talking about the certificate of need. I want to make sure the audience really understands what that means. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So in North Carolina is one of 34 what are called certificate of need states. And what that means is if an institution wants to implement what is called a new institutional health service, it must first obtain a certificate of need from the Department of Health and Human Services. And these new institutional health services consist of many healthcare facilities or equipment, for example, MRIs or operating rooms or hospital beds, acute care home beds, nursing home beds. Before someone can develop new institutional health services in North Carolina, they must first get a certificate of need.
All right. So I'm still going to stick with you, Derek. What are the requirements to be hired as an assistant AG in your division?
Sure. Well, of course, one must have a college degree, a law degree, and a law license. As Cannon mentioned earlier, we are trial attorneys. So the individual must be able to conduct trials, so they must be licensed by the bar. In my section, we no longer have any attorney 1 positions. We only have attorneys 2, 3, and 4. So the requirements for an attorney two is that the person must have at least 1 year of legal experience. So someone coming fresh out of law school wouldn't meet the minimum qualifications for a position in our section anymore, since we no longer have attorney ones. But we are always looking for bright, energetic folks with a healthcare and public service interest. Well, when we have positions open. So that's how you can come on board at the Department of Justice in the health service section.
Thank
If
you.
if I can just hop in quickly and say, Derek, that I will say that for our attorney positions, not only practice experience qualifies, but also clerking and other types of experience who qualify. So we have hired folks who have been to law school but have not specifically practiced yet in our section, given since only having attorney two. So I just want to note that for folks who may be thinking about that.
Very
Absolutely.
good point. Thank you, Eric.
Clerking experience does qualify as legal experience. So absolutely. Thanks for that, Eric.
So on that note, similarly, what are the requirements to get an internship or an externship within the division?
I guess I can top in as well because been handling this for a couple of years now. So essentially what we're looking for are folks with excellent grades and with clear passion for public service who want to work in our section. And that's really the main thing. You know, obviously these are unpaid internships in the public sector. So what we're looking for really is someone who shows that they have the skills of the potential, or even just the potential to develop those skills to work both in litigation and in healthcare. And I will say that while an interest in public services really is excellent for us, an interest in working in litigation is important, and an interest in healthcare overall. Actually, as an intern, really is probably the third level. You will learn some really interesting things about healthcare law. But as an attorney, especially as a junior attorney or as an intern, you know, the number one thing is learning litigation and learning the legal practice. So and wanting to work in public service. So that really is what drives, I would say, what we do. Don't you have anything to add to that, Derek?
Sure. Just to piggyback on that, as far as externships, we've had a few externs over the years. And even before my time as section head, I was largely in charge of bringing on externs. And usually what would happen, well, in several instances, there were individuals who applied for the internship and did not get it for whatever reason. And then they would contact me and say, well, hey, I didn't get the internship, but is it possible that I could do an externship? So even though there's nothing formal about externships for our section, typically it's just people who are go-getters. They would just contact me, send me an email, call me on my cell phone and say, hey, I'm interested in doing an externship. Can I do one? And we would bring them on. So if you're interested and you have the drive and the skills, we're happy to bring folks on and give them some deep, meaningful, substantive experience that they can't get in the classroom.
Absolutely. And Eric, one of the first things you mentioned was good grades. I personally work with a lot of law students who are phenomenal, like people. They would be phenomenal attorneys, but they may not have the best grades. What would you say to those applicants?
I think that's a good point, and I say excellent student. I think would want to see in our record, and obviously it's an imperfect process anytime you're hiring somebody, right? But what we want to see is someone who has the drive and the potential. And there's a few different ways to show that. So grades is one, but of course, understanding. We want someone who has demonstrated kind of an ability, and that may be through clear commitment to, say, litigation focused, moot court or trial experiences and practice and clinics. That may be through clear demonstration through public service, through other types of whether it's clinics or other things that demonstrate that kind of thing. So we try to take a very much a holistic approach, kind of reviewing any applications that we receive. And I will also say, again, we tend to get a good amount of applicants, but of course, summer internships are very competitive. We try to give everyone kind of a fair shot through that process. So I would say that there really should be nothing disqualifying if you're interested in this type of internship. That should already tell you something about yourself, which is if you actually are interested, then it's worth applying and trying to get an internship with the section.
So we already established that you can't get a job in this division straight out of law school. But what would you tell a student who is currently, still in law school, but they're interested in doing your job at some point in their career? What should they be doing now in preparation for that? We talked a little bit about litigation, but let's expand on that a little bit. Cannon, what do you think?
So I can talk a bit about my path to DOJ. I joined in the Attorney 2 role, and prior to that, I was working at Legal Aid of North Carolina. And in that role, I was in the courtroom, was involved in, we were doing eviction work mainly at that time, but got lots of good hearing experience. And then when I reached the point where I wanted to transition and continue the public service mindset that I had started out my legal career in, DOJ was a very natural progression of that. And I feel that the litigation skills I developed in my first year of practice were extremely helpful when transitioning over to DOJ. And I feel that the public interest element was one of the things that really brought me with DOJ. And that was something that was important during my interview process and has continued to guide me here. And so for me, those were the two most important things in how I wound up here.
Eric, what do you think? What should they do now to prepare?
Sure. I think for any kind of position like ours where we're litigation focused, it's very important coming out of law school, whether it's in public service or as Cannon did, or myself. So I went into civil practice, but I think it's very important to get those litigation skills early. And one of the things I'll say is that when I started out in civil litigation, I was a smaller cog in a bigger machine, right? There were bigger cases. I was a young associate at a private practice law firm. And one thing that does is when you're working on bigger cases, you get a perspective, I think, on litigation of the kind of the whole of complex litigation that you may not get in, let's say, an attorney one role. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but you might have to kind of learn more on your own to understand what a big case looks like if you've never been a part of one. So one thing I'll say is, to the extent possible for young attorneys, to get as much experience and get as much complex experience as you can, even if that means you're participating in a smaller role, because once you kind of get to a litigation where you're in control, then you have a better perspective. Because I think that's one thing that people are attracted to public service roles, because frequently, I mean, we have our own caseloads and we don't have a lot of people looking over our shoulders. But that also means you don't have a lot of people looking over your shoulder. So you need to direct your litigation. You have people you can discuss with, but Donald Rumsfeld, and maybe I'm dating myself now, but the unknown unknowns, right? If you don't know what questions to ask, then you will not ask those questions. So I think it's very important. I think to the extent you can get a general civil litigation experience, possibly focus in healthcare. But again, I think from the early experiences, litigation is the most important. Then you can learn as a litigator. You're set up well to learn a practice area. And if you're interested in our practice area, you can come here and learn it in fairly short order.
Let's expound on litigation a little bit. There is the idea that litigation means two people arguing in front of a judge. What does litigation mean in your division?
I'll turn over to Derek first. He's in charge of it all.
Well, let me throw this out there, and I believe Cannon mentioned it earlier. By statute, the state encourages settlement. So when there's the opportunity to settle cases amicably between the parties without going to court, without there being two lawyers on opposite sides arguing, we definitely avail ourselves of those opportunities. So litigation, I mean, that process from beginning to end, it certainly could end up in a trial, in an appeal before the Superior Court, in an appeal before the Court of Appeals, in an appeal before the Supreme Court. It could end up there. But oftentimes we are looking at, in the beginning, from the time complaints or petitions are filed, when we then engage in the discovery process, there is the opportunity to determine, to the extent we can, if there is a way that the parties can resolve those cases without it proceeding to a trial. Again, we are trial attorneys, so we certainly do not run away from trials. But if we can save the client's time and money and effort, we will do that to the extent that we can and try to resolve these cases. I want to back up just a little bit and just kind of to the last question about what can law students do. Certainly the demonstration, just as Eric and Cannon said, all of those things are very valuable. I also want to point out that I think networking, particularly while you're in law school, is a huge factor in landing opportunities once you're out into the workforce, because we're human. If we trust someone else, a colleague, co-counsel, opposing counsel, and they come to us and say, hey, I have this person who I know from wherever. It could have been that they intern in their office, externship, what have you. I have this person who I think would be a really good fit for a position that you have open. Certainly me as a hiring manager, I take those recommendations into account, because if I respect the person who is making the recommendation, then I respect their opinion of that person. And at least if that person is qualified or minimally qualified, I'm interested to see if that person's skill set truly fits with what we want to do. So I don't think it can be understated how important it is for law students, at least, to network, get yourselves out there, meet people, talk to people, even if it's cold calls, social media. I'm not a social media person. I mean, I only do LinkedIn. But whatever the case, when you have the opportunity to network professionally with other attorneys and legal professionals, take advantage of those opportunities to get your name out.
You are preaching exactly what I preach every day. This is a good opportunity to plug the Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division, where you have free membership. You can participate in any section. You can participate in meetings, social events, networking events, all the things. It's a voluntary bar. People who are there because they want to be there. And generally, we love law students. So we would love the opportunity to get involved with you and help you on your legal journey, but you have to take that first step. So Derek, I really thank you for putting that out there.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about what you wish law students knew about your job, or even young lawyers. Are there any perceptions about your job, or just things that maybe folks with less experience would think comes into play for your job?
One of the things that I say about particularly those of us who practice in the CON world, certificate of need world, 99% of the population probably has no idea what we do. However, what we do has such an impact on the citizens of North Carolina as far as the availability of healthcare, of facilities, of equipment, from Murphy to Manteo. What we do has such an impact, and it is such a rewarding experience to know that the work that we do actually has a positive effect on the citizens of the state. If you're public interest minded, if serving the public is important to you and it's valuable, you see that as valuable, there is certainly an added value to what we do. So we're anonymous, and I appreciate that, but I also appreciate the reward of what we get to do every day. And I would also just point out, before Cannon and Eric jump in, being here at the Department of Justice, oftentimes it's referred to as the largest law firm in the state. If there is a legal issue, there is likely someone in this building who has seen it before. We have a very collegial environment. There are always folks you can speak to about their experiences handling various types of cases. So it is an awesome opportunity to come to work every day and be surrounded by such astute legal professionals. So with that, I'll pass it off to Eric and Cannon and let them chime in.
Before they say anything, I want to come back to something you just said.
Okay.
So, one of the difficult things, especially with interviewing for DOJ positions, is the idea of helping people. So, when somebody is interviewing or even in understanding the role, when they come to you and say they want this job because they want to help people, what would you say to that?
I certainly understand it. I came to DOJ. I spent, like Eric mentioned earlier, I spent 3 years at a law firm and then came to DOJ. And I've now been at DOJ for about 14 and a half years. So I certainly understand the desire to help, the desire to assist. But what we're looking for when we're interviewing folks is, particularly for our positions, we're looking for a demonstrated desire to help. So, for example, if you if you have a healthcare background, or you've shown an interest in healthcare law, for example, several of the law schools have like a health law society or health law association, something along those lines. What we're looking for is your demonstrated desire to assist, particularly in the healthcare arena, because that is what we do. It's germane to what we do. So I understand how sometimes the interview process can be daunting, but I always encourage people who speak to me prior to applying for positions, make sure your application demonstrates that you have an interest in the type of work that we do, because that is what we base it. We evaluate the application. And for our positions, I know there's a disclaimer or some advice on the website that says whatever information you want to be considered, make sure you put it in the application. A resume, a cover letter, those are optional. So you can submit those, but we are bound by what's in the four corners of your application. So just make sure you review the job description and make sure that your experience, you do everything to make sure that your experience aligns with the job description and demonstrates your desire to work in this field.
So the division is helping people, but maybe not directly, right? You're helping through the certificate process, right?
Sure, and not just that. For example, so the goal of the Division of Health Service Regulation in general is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of North Carolina. So that division regulates the facilities that provide healthcare services to our citizens. So you're talking about nursing homes, assisted living facilities, mental health group homes, individuals who work in those healthcare facilities to make sure that the services that are provided, the healthcare services that are provided, meet our health, safety, and welfare standards. So in representing the division that regulates those facilities, it essentially holds accountable those practitioners, those healthcare service providers. So it is absolutely a direct link in assisting the citizens of North Carolina.
Thank you, Derek. I just wanted to make it known that DOJ is not particularly providing services to people. We are making sure that legal and healthy services are provided to people.
Absolutely.
All right, I cut y'all off, but Eric.
Sure, no,
let's
that's
talk
okay.
about.
That's very helpful. And I want to piggyback a little bit on that sort of on the helping, kind of to talk about something you wish people understood about the job. And I've got a couple things I think that are interesting about that. But on the helping, I think Derek is correct. But I think you're also correct, Kayla, that it's important to have an understanding of what that means as a lawyer, right? So we're lawyers, we have clients, and in our case, our client is the division, the people regulating or providing or allocating those services throughout the state. But it's so it is incredibly rewarding, but it is also there is an understanding that this is not, for example, someone who's like working directly with defending children in court, like on an individual basis, right? This We are representing an institutional client whose values very much align, I think, with our values, and our values are about protecting the citizens in our role. But I think it is, I would say, one level removed from some of those individual style representation roles. And it's something to understand about this. If you're coming to us, you're not going to be in court with somebody next to you every day where you're defending that individual's rights. You are going to be working through the court system every day, defending the rights of citizens of North Carolina. And there's a distinction between those two things. One thing I will say, I wish people kind of knew is I do feel very blessed to be here. And I think that there is coming, I think, from private practice as well with Derek, there's just such a difference in culture, in work ethic, in just, when you're in private practice, there's really no way around it. You spend a lot of time worrying about other people's money. That is just the nature of the game, right? And here is just a very different ethos. We are all here. We're all on salary. We're all here every day. And we're doing the work because we love the work, and we're putting in extra effort because that's what we want to do. And we have clients whose values directly align with ours. And so there's very little of sort of the culture of, just, in private practice, everyone is kind of competing with each other in a certain way for business, for position, for prestige. Whereas, of course, everyone here wants to work well at DOJ, but the culture, and I hope reflected by Derek and Cannon would say, is it is very much everyone is working on the same track. Everyone is moving in the same direction. Everyone is working towards the same goal. Obviously we're all maybe type A and lawyers and people, but it is very much a different work ethic than in private practice. And it's something one of the reasons I both moved and have enjoyed the move so much, because it is what I get to focus on the things that I love. Derek talks about networking and doing that, especially for business development, is one of my least favorite parts of being a lawyer. And now I don't have to do it very much. I'll network for certain reasons, but I get to focus on the litigation and on the development and working with the client and improving systems and those kind of things. And so it's very much a fit, and it may not be a fit for everyone, but it is certainly a fit, I think, for us. And so something to think about. And the last thing I'll say, I wish people say, this is more to young lawyers, is in terms of litigation, and to kind of come back to that just a little bit. I do think that Derek's point was correct in that it is a process, and it's a process that generally resolves a case without having a hearing. And so if you think, especially in our world, and this may not be true in, say, maybe in criminal defense or in some other positions where trials are at least more likely, the vast majority of our matters settle. But that is not to say that we don't have strong positions or are not aggressive. And so it's a learn. So one thing I think is that whatever you think as a very young lawyer about litigation is you probably have a lot more to learn. Like there's all this stuff of the technical side to learn. And then as you gain experience, you will see how that technical side provides you an advantage. Like when we go into a settlement, that we are in the best position because we have done X, Y, and Z. So we're now able to have a nice, calm, and cool discussion. Whereas if we had not done those things, we would maybe be behind the ball, or we would be in a worse position down the road. And so that, again, folds in with kind of understanding the big picture and understanding how all these things that you're learning now work. And it just takes experience is really unfortunate. That's sort of but you need the knowledge. And that's, as a young lawyer, focusing on understanding the how and the rules and the process and learning it, and then being able to apply it and learn through experience. So that's something I see a lot of young lawyers either coming out of the gate too hard of like, we're going to do everything in every case, or not quite like, what could we do here, and not maybe having the answer to all the things you could do. You need both, and then learn to apply them.
Cannon?
Yeah, so to echo both Eric and Derek, the colleagues here at DOJ are really fantastic. And it is great to be in an environment where everyone is so capable, so encouraging. I mean, you can walk down the hallway here and run into 8 different people who all have very complex things going on, but everyone can be a source of support, can help develop things, and it's just a wonderful environment to be in. The thing that I wish that people understood I don't know about any misconceptions about our roles. I think similar to Derek, I don't know if there is much, general perception of what it is that we do. But something that I have been really pleased with is how dynamic our roles are. We have a hand in many different processes. And I'll say multiple times a month, a week, I don't know, I get calls or get pulled into meetings, discussions about things that I previously had not known much about, but you really get the opportunity to do a deep dive into different subjects and to do analysis on things and provide what you gather to the client for them to make decisions based on. And so it is a very meaningful job. It is great to have the purpose that we do and to share that purpose with the client. I'll say, I think in our section particularly, we have wonderful clients who we work with, the heads of the different DHSR sections. And it is very nice to be in an environment where everyone feels like we are really, like Eric said, moving in the same direction towards the same goals. And so that is something that I hoped would be the case before, but have been very pleased to find is true here at DOJ.
Yeah, and I would agree that I have found that in the sections that I have worked in as well. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge agency clients and what that might look like. I think it's important for law students and young lawyers to have some general understanding of what it means to have an agency as your client as opposed to maybe a layperson. Can we talk about that a little bit?
I can hop in a little bit since I work, I think, probably the most with the licensure sections who do a lot of litigation. So I'm that front. And Derek may have a different perspective as well on COM, but I'll just kick it off and say that the number one thing is that they are still people. So there is no such thing as a true institutional client. And I say that because it has a different connotation, and there's certainly differences as opposed to representing an individual or layperson. But at the end of the day, there are people who are our clients. We're not representing them individually, but obviously the relationships, the trust, all of that kind of stuff is the same. They are people that we represent and interact with as our clients. Now, what institutional clients and as an agency specifically means is that unless we really mess up, they're stuck with us. So we represent them, and so there's not. As I said, there's no business development. We're not really getting new agencies into DOJ. We have a section, right? So that means that we interact with them just as a matter of routine. So they know they come to us and we go to them with our advice. And so that also means that there's a lot of institutional knowledge. And so the really one of the main differences between like you're a young attorney who has a client come in with some kind of claim who doesn't really know anything other than they have the problem here. We are so blessed to have clients who are so knowledgeable about what they do, about, even if we're saying, well, the law doesn't quite mean this, if they're doing something, it's probably for, some strong institutional reason that we might need to find a way to get there, or even if we are not doing that, to find a way, or, to work around the issue that they have because they well understand the issue. And so again, of course, there's turnover and things, but the long memories of the people involved, of the agencies involved, and the resources there make our lives very easy. And especially on our side, where most of our action occurs after they have made some decision, sort of without us. We're not also drafting like a ton of complaints and doing a bunch of stuff on our own. We are defending. We are sort of prosecuting sort of the action the state is taking in general. But we are in the role of just upholding what is by and large excellent work by many people. And I say also there's the section heads that we represent. There are hundreds of people involved across our sections in terms of the individual surveyors who are out in the facilities, up to their management, up to the senior folks in multiple sections that we deal with. So that work comes together, and it's so great. And we try to support them as much as we can because we know by supporting them that the results will be better as well through trainings and feedback and advice. So it's a great relationship, and it really starts there between the two.
I think that's excellent. I don't have anything to add. That's awesome.
Okay. Well, I thank each of you for your time today and for the knowledge that you have shared with our law students and young lawyers. If a law student or young lawyer wants to reach out to you, are y'all open to that?
Absolutely. All the time.
All right. That's
Anytime.
always great to hear. I can personally say that Derek is a great resource. So if you are interested in this section or even just learning more, please contact one of the three of them. If y'all don't have anything else to add to the discussion, we will go ahead and close out for today.
Thanks for having us, Kayla.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Kayla.